Have you ever caught yourself reacting to something way more emotionally than the situation actually deserved? Maybe someone ignores your message for a few hours, and suddenly you feel rejected. Maybe criticism feels strangely personal. Or maybe you keep repeating the same relationship patterns even when you swear you'll change. What if those reactions didn't start yesterday, but decades ago, before you even understood who you were? If that sounds familiar, you're far from alone. And more importantly, it doesn't mean you're irrational, weak, or too sensitive. A huge part of your emotional wiring was formed when your brain was still learning what the world was, what love felt like, and what you had to do to feel safe. Your mind adapted early, and those adaptations often stay running quietly in the background for years. Once you see that, a lot of your behavior starts making sense in a completely different way. In this video, we're going to look at how your early childhood quietly shaped your personality, the invisible patterns those experiences created, and the hidden ways they still influence your relationships, confidence, emotions, and decisions today. And at the end, we'll talk about something most people never realize. Your personality isn't a prison sentence. It's more like old software, and software can be updated. From the outside, personality feels permanent. You think of yourself as just an anxious person, or just independent, or just someone who avoids conflict. But most of the time, what you call your personality is actually a collection of learned survival strategies. Your brain noticed patterns early in life and built responses around them. If being quiet kept the environment peaceful, you became quiet. If being helpful earned affection, you became helpful. If expressing emotions caused rejection, your brain slowly learned to hide them. And here's where it gets interesting. As a child, you weren't choosing these behaviors consciously. Your brain was absorbing information like wet cement, taking footprints. Every interaction left an imprint. By around age 7, the emotional blueprint of how you relate to yourself and others is already heavily shaped. Pause for a second. What's one word that describes how you acted as a child? Comment it below. A child's brain is incredibly adaptive. It has to be. When you're young, your survival depends almost entirely on the people around you. So your nervous system constantly asks invisible questions. Am I safe here? What gets me love? What gets me rejected? And your brain remembers the answers. If affection felt unpredictable, you may grow up hyper-aware of people's moods. If you were praised only when achieving things, you may tie your worth to productivity. If your emotions were dismissed, you may struggle to even identify what you feel now. So why does your brain hold on to these patterns for so long? Because early experiences don't just create memories, they create expectations. Your childhood becomes the lens your adult brain uses to predict the future. It's like installing an operating system on a computer. Years later, you're still running programs you didn't consciously choose. The difficult part is that childhood adaptations often keep working long after the original danger is gone. The child who learned to avoid conflict becomes the adult who can't say no. The child who had to earn attention becomes the adult who constantly overworks. The child who felt emotionally unsafe becomes the adult who struggles to trust love even when it's genuine. And because these patterns feel familiar, your brain mistakes them for identity. But this is only half the picture because there's something underneath this that most people never see. Your brain prefers familiar pain over unfamiliar uncertainty. That's why people sometimes repeat the same toxic relationships, the same self-sabotaging habits, or the same emotional cycles over and over again. Not because they enjoy suffering, but because the nervous system is trying to return to what feels known. It's like a thermostat set years ago. Even when life changes, your emotional system keeps trying to return to the old temperature. Now here's the part that changes everything. These patterns are not evidence that you're broken. They're evidence that your brain learned how to protect you the best way it could with the information it had at the time. That people-pleasing tendency? It may have once helped you avoid conflict in an unpredictable environment. That emotional numbness? It may have started as protection against overwhelm. That constant need for reassurance? It may come from a younger version of you who never felt consistently secure. And here's where it gets really important. Buried inside almost every unhealthy coping mechanism is an intelligent adaptation. Your brain wasn't trying to ruin your life. It was trying to help you survive it. The problem is that survival mode and fulfillment mode are not the same thing. A life built entirely around emotional protection, eventually becomes emotionally limiting, like wearing armor so long that you forget how heavy it is. So, what do you actually do with this information? First, start noticing your emotional reactions without immediately identifying with them. Instead of saying, "This is just who I am," ask, "Where might this pattern have started?" That single question creates distance between you and the automatic response. Second, pay attention to what feels emotionally familiar, especially in relationships. Your nervous system often confuses familiarity with safety, even when the pattern hurts you. And third, this may be the most important part. Practice giving yourself what your younger self learned to seek externally: validation, patience, safety, permission to exist without constantly earning it. Because healing isn't becoming a different person. It's finally realizing that many parts of your personality were built in adaptation and deciding, consciously, which parts still deserve a place in your life today. So think back to the beginning of this video. That emotional reaction you thought was just your personality. The overthinking, the fear of rejection, the need to please everyone, the shutting down during conflict. What if those reactions were never random? What if they were echoes? Because the truth is, a huge part of who you are was shaped before you even had the language to understand it. But understanding where a pattern came from changes your relationship with it completely. You stop seeing yourself as broken. You start seeing yourself as adapted. And that changes everything. Because if these behaviors were learned, they can also be unlearned. Not overnight, not perfectly, but consciously. You are not trapped inside the first version of yourself your environment created. You are someone becoming aware of the code you've been running for years, and awareness is where change begins. And maybe for the first time, you get to decide which parts of that old programming still belong in your future. If this gave you a new way to understand yourself, subscribe to Brain Simplified, because every week we break down the hidden psychology behind thoughts, emotions, and behaviors you thought were just personality. And if this resonated with you, watch the next video on screen. It'll help you understand another hidden psychological pattern that may be shaping your thoughts, emotions, and behavior without you even realizing it. I'll see you there.